Alright, so the title of this video may seem a little bit dramatic, and I know only one team can win the championship. Therefore, 29 teams are probably going to go home disappointed depending on their expectations for themselves, right? And I've made a video similar to this, but it was more so focused on a specific player, usually a young player. For example, real quick before we get into the actual video, someone like Shaedon Sharpe, who I've talked about a lot recently, but I feel like it's kind of now or never for him, right? If he's going to be a Blazers legend, it has to start right now. Another example, a player I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel, LaMelo Ball. I love LaMelo. I think LaMelo is one of the most talented players in the NBA. But if he's going to be a Hornets legend, if he's going to get his jersey retired, there has to be upward momentum starting right now. It can't be another injured season. It can't be another 20-something win season. It has to be something that the Hornets can look at and say, okay, we can build around this guy, right? So that's one example of now or never, but the one I'm talking about is more so team situation and core situations. Cores that have been together for years now, and if they don't do something different or achieve a different level of success this year, it's probably over. And like I said before, only one team can win the championship. We know OKC is heavily favored, so it is a sliding scale. But we could start with an obvious one, and my last video was about this team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now for them, I don't know what that scale is. Before last year, when you're a 64-win team, it is championship or bust, quote unquote, going into the playoffs. But do they feel like that right now? Is it a successful season for Cleveland to make the conference finals at this point? I think those are realistic expectations for me, but for them, that might be still them coming up short. And if they, God forbid, don't make the conference finals or somehow get bounced in the first round or something like that, something crazy like that, I think we all know this core will be broken up. The only real question is Darius Garland traded, or is Jared Allen traded, or are both of them traded? Or is there some crazy world out there where they get this offer they can't turn down for Donovan Mitchell? Is that a possibility as well? I don't think that would happen, but who knows? I mean, I don't believe it would happen just because the coach they have, the situation they've been in the last couple years, they're going to want to go for it. But honestly, if there is a situation where they come up short again, Darius Garland's still very young. Evan Mobley's still very young. Maybe it would be the smart thing. I'm just talking out loud here. I'm not making any declarative statements. I'm just talking about how it could go. Maybe the smart thing would be to ship Donovan Mitchell out for a bunch of future assets and build around Evan Mobley going forward instead of, panicking and trading Darius Garland for a player to help you win now, and then all of a sudden you don't win now, and you've kind of, put yourself in a rough place to build around Evan Mobley going forward. I'm just, again, talking out loud. And I don't even know who's giving you that type of offer for Donovan Mitchell at this point. So the more likely thing is that Darius Garland would be traded, but we don't need to focus on this one because everyone is already talking about this one. There's a ton of pressure on Cleveland this year, so that is what it is, right? But let's go to a team that is their biggest rival in the Eastern Conference, a team that I feel like is going to be the 1 seed in the East, the New York Knicks. And there was already a ton of pressure on this team, on this core. They fired Tom Thibodeau, right? There's a ton of pressure, but that only ratchets up when you get the news that Giannis, if he were to go anywhere, would want to go to the Knicks. That puts a lot of pressure on everybody in that building, not named Jalen Brunson. And I don't know what I'm doing here. Maybe it's my personal expectations for this team as to why I feel like for the Knicks, anything but a finals appearance would be a disappointment. But for Cleveland, I feel like making a conference finals should be fine. But again, maybe that's my personal bias because I think the Knicks are the better team. And also maybe I feel that way because Cleveland still has Evan Mobley, who's going to be a great player for the next 10 to 15 years, whereas the Knicks are built around guys in their prime right now. Cat, Brunson, and Bridges are 29, Josh Hart is 30, Anunoby's 28, right? These guys are not getting any younger. They should all be in their physical peak right now. It should be championship. It should be finals or bust for this team. And it's really unfortunate for them because they slayed the dragon of the Celtics last year and no one really cares because Tatum got hurt and then they lost to Indiana. But they did something that nobody would have predicted last year in beating the Celtics, right? You remember how terrible they were against the Celtics in the regular season, but Jalen Brunson turned it up a notch. Cat played really good defense one-on-one against Tatum. Mikal Bridges had 2 extremely clutch defensive plays, right? But no one's really going to remember that series. But anyways, all these guys are signed long-term. Anunoby, 3 years and a player option. He's probably going to accept that player option. Jalen Brunson, 4 more years. Mikal Bridges now 5 more years signed. Cat has 2 years and a player option for $61 million. He's probably going to take that player option. So everybody signed long-term except for Mitchell Robinson, who hopefully they re-sign. And then Josh Hart, who has one of the more tradable deals in the NBA, because he has 2 more years at about $20 million, and then he has a team option for $22 million in 2027. And this is where I have to be transparent and admit my biases. I was a Lakers fan when Josh Hart was drafted. I watched every Pelicans game that Josh Hart played. I've never been a big Josh Hart guy. Now, he's become a better player than I ever imagined he would be, but I still feel like he's a very overrated defender. He's an elite rebounder for sure, but the idea that Josh Hart is such a pivotal part in the Knicks offense, I feel like is not a good thing. I just don't feel like it's a good thing. Maybe that's my bias. Maybe that's not even relevant, but I feel like I'm saying that because I think the Knicks' biggest problem is their lack of playmaking around Cat and Brunson, which has kind of forced Josh Hart into this point forward role because no one else on the team can really pass. But the idea of Josh Hart being second on your team in assists to me is crazy. And I feel like we really seen the limitations of his offense in the Indiana series. I think Josh Hart is a good player. I think Josh Hart is a useful player. I could see Josh Hart on a championship winning team, just not as the 3rd most involved offensive player. I think that's crazy. I think that's kind of absurd. And I think Mikal Bridges should have the ball in his hands more. And I think if the Knicks come up short, there's one of 2 options. Either they go for an extreme home run swing, whether it's Giannis or someone else, they could do that. Or they try to add more playmaking on this team. And I think Josh Hart would be the guy that you have to move in that deal. I know he's the only other playmaker on this team, so it sounds kind of stupid to move him. But I really feel like they just need more passing around Cat and Brunson. But what makes it difficult is the whole Mitchell Robinson factor, because if you tell me Mitchell Robinson is healthy and I got the roster I have Brunson, I have Mikal, I have OG, I have Cat, do I want Josh Hart or do I want someone like Malik Monk, right? If you're telling me I have Mitchell Robinson, I don't need really the rebounding of Josh Hart, I'd probably want Malik Monk in that 6-man role. And I'm not the biggest Malik Monk guy, but I keep bringing him up because I feel like he's very tradable, very gettable right now, and he would be a good fit on a lot of teams. But let me know if you disagree with that. It's not really, I have my feelings about Josh Hart, but it's more so like looking at the contract situation and how they would be able to make any moves. Kind of seems like Josh Hart would be the most likely to go. And I also don't think, if Mitchell Robinson is there, I don't think it would be the biggest loss in the world, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's the heart and soul of the team, all that. Maybe I'm not quantifying that. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Moving on. Another team that I keep talking about, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, this one is a bit difficult to talk about because their starting center and starting point guard are old. So it's like, is that just going to be the natural change in the core going forward? They upgrade those positions. But I don't really want to focus on that. I mean, we could focus on Rob Dillingham, right? And the possibility of him being, let's not even call it an all-star point guard. Let's just say a above average starter level point guard. If he can be that, that does change the whole dynamic of this roster going forward. But I want to focus on, there was 3 guys, right? After Cat left, this team was supposed to be built around 3 guys going forward. Now they end up getting Julius Randle, but the future of this team was supposed to be Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid. And the level of success they had the last 2 years, back-to-back conference finals, I feel like it makes them feel like they are closer than they actually are. And maybe there's evidence in the way they lost both of those conference final series, not really close in either one of them. But I feel like we can all kind of agree right now. Maybe you still have hope that Jaden McDaniels is going to hit this other level. I'm kind of off that. I've been off that. Even though last year was his best year, I'm no longer believing in the highest ceiling of him. Maybe he gets incrementally better. But the idea of Jaden McDaniels, 3rd best player on a championship team, I don't see that happening. And I would say the last couple years, he's been the 4th best player on a conference finals levels team, yet alone a championship level team. It was Ant, Cat, Rudy, then McDaniels, Now it's Ant, Julius, Rudy, then McDaniels. Maybe you could have Rudy ahead of, whatever you want to do with that, right? But I think this is probably going to be the last year of Rudy in even somewhere close to his prime, because he's no longer prime Rudy. But I think this is going to be the last year of Rudy at this level. And as he declines, I don't see Jaden McDaniels or Naz Reid becoming the third best player on a championship team. And I don't see Julius Randle as the second best player on a championship level team. So we don't really know what's going to happen here. We don't know what Rob Dillingham's going to be. We don't know what Leonard Miller is going to be. We don't know what Terrence Shannon, Jalen Clark. Who knows, right? Who knows what they could be? But right now it looks like it's going to be Anthony Edwards and a bunch of role players. So if you're in Minnesota, do you really believe you are a championship team, or do you try and get ahead of it? Do you bite the bullet and trade one of the players that have helped you get to 2 straight conference finals in order to take that swing, or do you just stay where you are right now and hope Rob Dillingham becomes an all-star, hope Terrence Shannon Jr. becomes a starting level player, all that, or are you going to go try to get a player that is at least as good as Julius Randle? And the name that obviously keeps coming up is Darius Garland. If Minnesota comes up short, Cleveland comes up short, I could see that deal happening. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a point guard. It could be a playmaking wing. It could be a playmaking 5. This might sound crazy right now because I think Orlando's going to be good. But if Orlando isn't as good as we think, I could see a Franz, Anthony Edwards pairing. I could see that looking amazing together. Just throwing out names, right? We'll see how this season plays out. What's up with Sabonis? Do I love that? I don't know, but I could see Sabonis, Anthony Edwards DHOs. Who knows? Who knows what could really happen? And I don't know why, but I think at some point, Big Zoo is going to end up in Minnesota. Don't ask me why. I just feel like that's going to happen. And the last team I want to talk about is a team I've been watching a lot in preseason, a team that I have not liked what I've seen from them in preseason. And I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors. Now, I have liked what I've seen from Kuminga. Moody looked great, then he got hurt and is now not going to be ready for opening day, and I think he was going to be their opening day starter at the 2. So a lot going on in Warriors land, but one player that has not looked great is Draymond Green. And I know I've done this for years at this point, thinking, okay, they're going to move on from Draymond now. They're going to move on from Draymond now. But they haven't moved on from Draymond, but we're getting to a point where, well, we keep hearing about this 2-year window, right? Steph has 2 years left on his deal, so does Draymond, so does Jimmy Butler. For what it's worth, so does Pods on his rookie deal. That's what we keep hearing about. It's a 2-year window for this era of the Warriors. But I think we all know the Warriors think very highly of themselves. What if they completely flame out this year? And it could happen for a bevy of reasons. What if Steph Curry gets hurt? What if Draymond gets hurt? What if Jimmy gets hurt? All those can happen. What if they just aren't good enough? That can happen as well. Because last year they have the excuse, and the valid excuse or reason, whatever you want to call it, for losing to Minnesota. Steph Curry got hurt. We can all acknowledge that as a real excuse, right? But in their mind, they're thinking if Steph Curry didn't get hurt, we might be in the finals. And who knows, maybe they're right. But if they get humbled this year and get sent home in the first round by a Houston or a Clippers or Minnesota, whoever, what do they do at that point? Do they come back the next year and still build around Steph Curry and Draymond and Jimmy, of course, but is it still that identity? Or do they actually figure they need to do something different? And I'm not one of these guys that's a Draymond hater that doesn't understand his value. I think Draymond is the best defender of this generation, probably a top 5 defender of all time. I get it. But it does come to a point where, and I'm just talking, we haven't seen it yet, but you are kind of capping your offensive potential. And this is where I don't want to go, because I'm not the biggest Kuminga fan in the world. I don't think Kuminga is this superstar waiting to happen. But you look at this Warriors team, I think there's a true possibility that we never get to see the best version of them because of politics, if that's what you want to call it, right? I'm not saying this is the case. Trust me, I'm not saying this as it's a fact. I'm saying we will never figure it out because of Draymond, because of his allegiance and what he means to that team. But what I'm saying is, look, you got Al Horford, who we're seeing it in the preseason, does a lot of the Draymond things, and on offense is a better player than Draymond. If you have a lineup including Al Horford, Jimmy Butler, and Steph Curry, 3 good to great passers for their position, wouldn't it make sense to have this elite, dynamic, finishing above the rim wing next to him? Wouldn't that make sense? Not saying that's going to be the lineup or should be the lineup. I'm not saying that lineup will be great. I'm saying, wouldn't it make a ton of sense to explore that lineup, to see what you can get out of that lineup, to see what you could get out of Kuminga in that lineup? But the Warriors probably aren't going to go to it because they got to protect the ego to a certain extent of Draymond. And I'm not saying that as a knock on Draymond because it's a very human thing. But I feel like the trio of Al Horford, Jimmy, and Kuminga is something that could really flourish, and we're not going to see it that much because of Draymond. And it doesn't bother me because, oh, I think Kuminga's this elite player. It bothers me because we won't know. It bothers me because we will never know what Kuminga could do in this hypothetical situation because they have to cater to Draymond. I'm not saying that like Draymond has been a bum. I'm not saying that like Draymond hasn't been really helping the team. I'm saying the Warriors would rather go out with Draymond than explore the chance that Kuminga's a star. Like, what if Kuminga really is a better player than Draymond this year? We will never get the chance to know that because they're not gonna, they're not gonna explore that. So that's what bothers me. And if we get to the end of the season and Kuminga makes it through this year with the Warriors, which I feel like is gonna happen, and Draymond looks, he looks like an aging Draymond, and Al Horford looks, right? Are we gonna get to the end of this year and they're gonna let Kuminga walk and do this again next year? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm interested in. Like, what has to happen for the Warriors to figure out, or not figure out, but come to the conclusion that maybe we shouldn't be building around a player that is hurting our offense as much as Draymond does, especially when you have Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. You want to put someone next to them that can really finish, So again, I know there's a lot of Draymond haters. I've made my videos with my critiques of Draymond, but I'm not one of these people that don't understand the value in Draymond. I just think there's always been this sentiment with the Warriors that you can't replace Draymond. You just can't replace what he does. I agree with that. That doesn't mean that's the only way to win, though. You don't have to win with a Draymond at center. You can win other ways. So that's always kind of been like a disingenuous thing to say, like, oh, you can't replace Draymond. Like, imagine the Warriors without Draymond. Well, yeah, you move on from Draymond, but you build something different. Steph Curry could play a different way. Jimmy Butler could play a different way. So it's not really a prediction. I'm just watching the Warriors in preseason. I'm watching the passing of Al Horford, knowing the passing of Jimmy Butler. You're going to add in Draymond, and all of a sudden you just have 3 front court players playing catch with each other instead of having a guy in there that could just go dunk on anybody in Kuminga. However you feel about Kuminga, and again, I'm not the biggest Kuminga believer, I do think he still is the key to unlocking the ceiling of this team. And are you not going to try that just to protect the feelings and ego of Draymond? That's just what I'm worried about. And if that does happen and you go home in the first round, what are you going to do next year? I don't think they move on from Draymond, but is there a potential Draymond 6-man? Is there a potential just minimizing his role in the offense a bit? I've been saying that for years, but I think we're really at that point, and I just want to see what happens. I really want to see the lineup of Steph Curry, Moses Moody, Jimmy Butler, Kuminga, Al Horford. I'm not saying that has to be the lineup, but I feel like Steve Kerr, you gotta play that lineup. You gotta see what that lineup can be. You gotta see what Moody and Kuminga could do with those playmakers next to him. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know where you agree. Let me know where you disagree in the comments down below. Let me know if I don't know ball, all that. Please like, comment, subscribe. It will mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.